Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another speed build for the Disney Save. Today we have the second residential of Moonwood Mill. This is going to be Dr. Finkelstein's lab, and this is the home where Sally lives, as well as Dr. Finkelstein. There was a little bit of debate when I was personally planning this world about whether or not I would move Jack and Sally in together, even though at the end of the film they do seem like they are a couple. It never really depicts them actually living together. And then maybe we could have made this lot a community lot, which I guess you certainly still could do, but I ended up opting to keep it a residential so we could have a few more residentials for this world. I have some other lots coming up that are going to be community based, and I really needed to balance it a little bit more, so you had some more households to play with in this world. So I ended up opting for a residential, and I'm kind of happy that I did. This is a very unique house. It's like a laboratory. It's also kind of like a library. You could picture it sort of as a community building, or in a small town, it would be like a resource. You would kind of go over here and speak to the doctor, and Jack kind of does that in the film. So it is a house. It's also kind of like a community building. I've been really fortunate when trying to find reference from the film in that there's so many variations of the different models from Nightmare Before Christmas being recreated into little ornaments or just pieces for villages, or I was able to find like the actual pictures of the models and pieces that were used on the sets as well. So even though the interiors of some of those are built outside of what is actually used as the exterior model, as is pretty typical, it's still really helpful for me to be able to get to see some of those details of what the outside actually looks like. Now this location in the film, the top bit of it, the upper floor where the lab actually is a lot more round in like a spherical sort of way. So it almost looks like a big ball resting on top of a tube. This is not an uncommon sort of shape for a building. I have seen other buildings like this, and I have over the years of building tried to come up with a way to make like almost a sphere sitting on top of a tube. And I know you're like, Mole, that can't possibly come up that often, but it does in Disney sort of things. I'll give you a recent example. The tower that is on the top of Lilo and Stitch's house is basically exactly the same structurally, and I always look at those builds and think like, how can I possibly make like a full sphere that sits on top? And there really is no current good answer to that. So I end up usually just opting for a really round roof, and in this instance, round walls. And I just want to mention, I'm gonna not try to take too much time out of this video to talk about this because I don't want to like complain, but just this build alone has made me truly realize how broken curved walls currently are in The Sims. To me, it sort of feels like they launched it and like it's just not working as intended, but I don't feel like they intend to fix it either. I never really see any discourse about this, and like I think it's one of those things where everybody's just sort of happy that we have them now, and it was one of those things that as a community people sort of collectively decided we're probably never going to get round walls. So when we got them, it was like this initial excitement of yes, we finally got them, and there are some really cool things aesthetically I can do, sort of like this build where I get to use the round walls and it makes it look a little bit truer to the actual film. But decorating the interior of this was a nightmare. I had to cut a lot of the footage because it's really just me trying to fiddle and get things off of walls. Some issues I was having that I do sort of routinely have, but like particularly with this build, when you place certain objects on round walls, particularly like shelves, because the wall is round, I think it doesn't really expect you to actually place a shelf down, or maybe they don't think too many people will be doing that. So objects will get stuck, and even on walls that aren't round. So in this build, we have the stairs. They're located right in the center. I decided to opt for like an interior center staircase because in the film, this would be like a spiral staircase that hugs the walls. This is a repetitive problem that I have when trying to do Disney builds. It's just not possible. So instead of doing ladders here, stairs make a little bit more sense. Decided to kind of put it in the middle there, which means we have a sphere with a box inside of it. And even on the walls that make up that box in the middle, trying to hang things on that wall, they were getting stuck. Like I would put something down and I wouldn't be able to move it again. I actually had to demo half of this entire building, delete the entire half side of it just to get something off of the wall that I didn't want kept there anymore. The cloning tool that I use a lot, where you can copy an object that you've already placed down to use somewhere else, if it's attached to a curved wall, it doesn't seem to work a lot of the times. It also causes issues with carpets, placing them down. They'll disappear when you zoom out, they'll come back when you zoom in. And then painting ceiling tiles is sort of not working on round rooms either. One of my patrons was really kind and let me know that you could do it individually tile by tile, and it should work a lot better than just trying to paint this ceiling of an entire room at once, which is also just like a time-consuming and inconvenient sort of thing. So all of this to say, I had a really difficult time decorating this place, and if there's some weird cuts in the footage, it's simply because I'm trying to move an object around and the game's really not letting me, and it doesn't make for good content when I'm like fiddling with something or having to tool something into place when I really shouldn't have to. So that's kind of why some of the footage for the interior of this is cut. I originally started in here with brick, but it does change to metal. I noticed from some of the screenshots in the film that really the inside of this is pretty much all metal, industrial looking, pipes everywhere. Overall, the film really leans into more of a mechanical industrial feel for the interior of this location. Something I did notice throughout the film is there's actually a real lack of furniture in this place, not just in like comfort furniture, but items in general. One of the only scenes that really takes place in this laboratory is when Sally's mixing the original potion that she uses to get away from Dr. Finkelstein, and that little kitchen cooking area where she's making her soup has almost nothing there. There's like one cauldron and a shelf on a wall and like nothing else in the immediate surrounding or the background. The same can be said for her bedroom. We do get to see the inside of her bedroom, Sally's bedroom specifically, but we only see she has the window that she leaves out of, a bed, and then like maybe a shelf or two. I have definitely given her way more in her room than she is ever shown to have in the movie. I just felt bad, if I'm being honest. It feels like she's, I mean, for all intents and purposes, she kind of is being held against her will, so it is a little bit prison-esque. I decided to play into her character a little bit more. She's into sewing, given like her costume and character monster design. She's kind of like a Frankenstein adjacent creature. So she knows how to sew. That was depicted in the film, and the only thing that we have closest to it is going to be knitting or embroidery. So I gave her a little bit of that. Because she did the potion making in the beginning, but we're not going to be making her a spellcaster, I decided that the next closest thing would be like herbalism and flower arranging. And there's some flowers in game that are like poisonous, and I decided we would do a little bit of those, kind of leave them around her room. She has the flower arranging table just so she has a few things to do, but really not too much. Some like hidden butterflies here and there in her bedroom, but really not a lot. I gave her way more color in her room than I probably should have. I just felt bad like putting her in there and having it be like this little prison cell. The pack I ended up using the most in this build by far was Star Wars. Star Wars comes with so many items that are just like fantasy related and leaning a little bit more towards that mechanical industrial look without them being super descript like this is a Star Wars item. I tend to stay away from like the toy models of the various Star Wars ships or like the little baby Yoda statue. I'm not using any of that stuff here, but we have like creatures in jars and boxes and totes and those sort of things that I can put around as decor that make a lot of sense for like a laboratory done this way. In the film, I believe this upstairs portion is her bedroom, but it's also the main part of the laboratory. Just because of the way that the layout of this was designed, I ended up putting most of the lab downstairs on the bottom floor. There is a middle floor that really just serves as like stairs and a bathroom. There's really nothing there. I put some crates and some lights and things around just so that it matches everything, but there's no actual rooms there. But because I couldn't make his lab in its full glory and I had to sort of split this space upstairs with Sally's bedroom, I put more lab stuff into Dr. Finkelstein's room. Some Strangerville items, some of like the lab pieces that come from that. There's definitely like technology in this lab. I can see it even in the film. He's working on some tables and some light tables and things. You can see potions, and not just potions, but like beakers, actual science equipment. So I did give him some actual technology in here as well. I'm really excited for you to see how these guys turned out. Dr. Finkelstein is one of the few Sims that'll be living in this world that isn't getting an occult status, but he's gonna be like a mad scientist. He'll be a scientist that you could actually play through the get to work career with, and he'll be like a different one because actually I don't think we have one so far that's an actual scientist dedicated for that career, but when we do eventually get another one, he'll be the one that you can kind of like do the career and be a little bit wacky with it or mad or evil. One last thing I want to mention in regards to this build is that when you originally download Moonwood Mill, this lot is a library, and you need this library for gameplay purposes. There are books that spawn here that have to do with the storylines dedicated to this world. I've done a bit of research, and from what people were saying on the Sims 4 forums, if you don't have the library in this world, those books that you need to complete the storyline for Moonwood Mill will spawn at any given bookcase in this world, community law or not. So you could still come here and use this as a library or as a research location to play that story through if you wanted to, but the books will spawn at any bookcase. And I'll play with this a little bit when I actually do like the testing for the world and everything, but that's what I'm reading on the Sims forum. So if you're wondering how that's going to play out, you can still run through the whole storyline for werewolves if you want to. That is it for today's build. The next video is going to be the creative sim for the 2 that are living here. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you'd like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below or the one at the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you all in the next one.